Good morning, sisters, and welcome to Promises and Attributes, episode 10. I want to start with you today in a scripture that has been one of my favorites for a long time. It was the scripture that was our theme scripture my senior year of seminary, and it is in Deuteronomy chapter 31, verse 6. It says, "Be strong and have a good courage. Fear not, nor be afraid of them. For the Lord thy God, he it is that doth go with thee. He will not fail thee nor forsake thee." This is an amazing promise given to covenant Israel, and one that I think is especially important for us to remember when the odds are stacked against us, as they so often are in the world that we live in and the trials that we go through. You guys know by now how much I love Moses and his story, because we go back to Moses so much. But I love Exodus 14, which is where we read about the miracle of the parting of the Red Sea. It tells us earlier on in the chapter that Pharaoh has sent 600 chariots to go after the children of Israel once they have escaped. After Pharaoh actually himself lets them go after all the plagues and everything. And then he realizes what he's done and he gets angry. And so he he sends all these chariots to go after them. And the children of Israel are understandably a little bit scared at this point, as all of us would be when we see this huge enemy behind us and we're fleeing this enemy only to come up against the wall of what seems like an impossible thing to cross the Red Sea. And I love the way Moses responds here. So it's kind of funny too, to read what the children of Israel say. They were like, "Oh, Moses, because there were no graves in Egypt, thou hast taken us away to die in the wilderness? Wherefore hast thou dealt with us, to carry us forth out of Egypt?" Poor Moses. Moses didn't feel comfortable with this job anyway, and now people are complaining that he's done what he's done. But listen to his response. "And Moses said unto the people, Fear not, stand still, and see the salvation of the Lord, for which he will shew to you this day. For the Egyptians whom ye have seen today, ye shall see them again no more forever. The Lord shall fight for you, and ye shall hold your peace." I love that. And we all know what happens after that, right? We know that Moses is miraculously able to part the waters of the Red Sea so that all the children of Israel can go across on dry ground. And then when all the forces of Egypt come into the Red Sea, the Lord closes the waters on top of them. And the Lord is able to deliver his people. We need this constant reminder, not only of this promise that God has given us of deliverance, but a promise of deliverance even when deliverance seems impossible. Remember, all things are possible for him. So later on in Deuteronomy 20, Moses gives a reminder of this that has happened and says to the people when they are faced with more enemies, he said, "When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies and seest horses and chariots and a people more than thou, be not afraid of them, for the Lord thy God is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt." So he reminds them, hey, remember what happened with us. He brought us to safety. He was able to save us. Every time you go forward to an enemy, even when it seems greater than you, even when it seems impossible, remember that. "And it shall be when ye are come nigh unto battle, that the priest shall approach thee and speak unto the people, and say unto them, Hear, O Israel, ye approach this day unto battle against your enemies. Let not your hearts faint. Fear not, and do not tremble, neither be ye terrified because of them. For the Lord thy God, the Lord your God is he that goeth with you, to fight for you against your enemies, to save you." Isn't that a beautiful promise? That we don't need to fear, even in the face of being completely outnumbered, because God is with us to save us and deliver us. This promise of deliverance is all over in Scripture. And sometimes when God delivers us, the odds are so stacked against us It's for a reason. I love, love, love. And I mentioned this before a few weeks ago, but there's a story in Judges. It's one of my very favorite stories in all of the Old Testament. Excuse me, of Gideon. We talked about Gideon when we talked about weak things being made strong, because God called Gideon and he did not feel like he was up to this task. And the task that he was up against was to free the people of Israel, the children of Israel, from bondage to the Midianites. They had fallen into, the children of Israel had fallen into disobedience, and then they had become in bondage under the Midianites. And that's what God was asking Gideon to do, was to free them from that. But then it gets worse. Like, poor Gideon is already feeling like, there's no way I can do this. Who am I? I'm like this weak person. And then God says to him in chapter 7, verse 2, he says, the people that are with thee are too many for me to give the Midianites into their hands, lest Israel vaunt themselves against me, saying, mine own hands have saved me. So basically what God's saying is, this army that you have, this group that you have, it's too big. And we need, even though you're outnumbered, even though you've been in bondage to these people, it's too big, and we need to pare this army down. Because, did you catch that? So Israel doesn't think that it was by their hand that it was done. So God can show forth his power and his ability to deliver us and to do the impossible. And so they, through a series of little events, God pares down Gideon's army to 300 people. He started with 30,000 people, and God pares it down to 300 people, and they're able to conquer. Why? Because God was with them, and because God was able to deliver them. And even with the 300, they needn't have feared, because God was there with them to deliver them. This kind of deliverance isn't just for a whole people. I think First Nephi is one of the best examples of God giving personal deliverance in so many things. And we could go on in all of Scripture. We can think about how God delivered Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego from the fiery furnace. How he delivered Daniel from a den of lions, a den of hungry lions at that. How he delivered Alma and Amulek from prison. How he has delivered Alma from his wicked ways. Like I was saying, it's interesting to look at First Nephi, because one time I was doing a study of this idea of deliverance, and over and over and over again in First Nephi, Nephi was being delivered, and his family were being delivered from different things. Deliverance from Jerusalem, which was going to be destroyed. Deliverance from Laban when he was after them and trying to get them when they went to try and get the plates. Deliverance into the place he needed to be to have Laban delivered into his hands. He was delivered from his brothers on multiple occasions, delivered from bondage, delivered from the tempest when they were in the ocean. He was delivered in so many ways. And all of these ways are possible for us too. God has the power to deliver us from anything that we could possibly come up against. I love when we were just reading recently in Doctrine and Covenants, section 3. And we know this section is all about the part that dealt with the manuscript and the loss of the manuscript. And I love what God says to Joseph here. He says, you should have been faithful, and I would have extended his arm of support. Oh, and he would have extended his arm of support against and supported you against all the fiery darts of the adversary, and he would have been with you in every time of trouble. You remember part of why Joseph felt like he needed to, in the end, give the manuscript to Martin was because he felt the support from Martin, where he wasn't feeling it from anyone else. And he felt like he needed to do that, to continue with the support and to continue getting funding for what he needed. And he forgot that God was there, and God could have delivered him from any of that, delivered him from any trouble that he faced. I want to end today with just one quick thought from Mosiah 7, verse 33, because it tells us here what is important for our deliverance. He says, but if you will turn to the Lord with full purpose of heart and put your trust in him and serve him with all diligence of mind, If you will do this, he will, according to his own will and pleasure, deliver you out of bondage. That means, sisters, that when we are faced with a fiery furnace or the Red Sea on one side and the Egyptian army on another side, or when we are faced with brothers that are trying to make things hard for us, or tasks that God has given us that seem impossible, what we really need to do is trust in him and in his power and in his ability to do the impossible, and he will be able to deliver us from everything that we suffer from.